to radio, the remix in your soul. Indie beats and killer comedy, taking control. Got that rhythm, got that wit, a perfect blend from the start of the show till the very end. Spinning tracks you never thought you'd find, expanding horizons.
Welcome to Take Two Radio. I'm Pam, your host, and I'm here with my co-host, Anthony.
Hey,
Today we
Pam.
are today we are excited. I got too excited there, you see, to welcome a guest whose career spans decades in television, film, directing, and writing.
We are very excited to welcome to the remix someone that we spoke to on Take Two Radio, the mothership back in the day. You may know him as Dr. Kevin Collins or his evil twin on General Hospital. You may know him currently playing Joey on Behind the Gates. He has also popped up all over the soap world, including As the World Turns and other shows. So we're really excited to get to the heart of Jon's writing career today.
Yes, welcome, Jon Lindstrom. We are so excited to have you today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited. It's been a while since we've spoken.
It has been. It's been a while, but you've been so incredibly busy that there's just no time in the day for you to even sit down and have a cup of coffee sometimes.
I tell you, I think I've reached that level of busy where I don't even realize I'm busy. I'm just trying to get through.
I have to wonder how often you wake up and say to yourself, okay, which role am I playing today? And not necessarily on screen, but just of all the things you're doing in life, like what cap am I putting on today?
You know, yes. But I'm so incredibly fortunate. I get to wake up every day, and if not only one thing, often multiple things. Anything that I'm doing, certainly of a professional nature, is something that I love to do. Whether I get up and write in the morning, whether I'm going to go act somewhere, I'm just so blessed. So if you ever hear me complain about it, I give you permission to slap me the next time you see me.
Before we get into the pre-described questions about the book and such, you've said, in other veins and speaking with us on other shows that, playing the baddie gives you a much fuller range and is much more satisfying. I have to wonder, when you look around at the world, especially the world of Hollywood, do you catalog like, oh, this would make a great scene, or if I, tweak this a little bit, this would really fit into a story I want to tell?
Sometimes, yes. I mean, I tend to draw from a lot of memories that I've had over the years because I've been in Hollywood for a long time. But there's certainly, it might be a few times during a day, if you're paying attention, and actors and writers really should observe more than anything else, that I'll go, hey, what if that I just saw someone do happened in a different situation? And you start to run with that. So, I think to answer your question, just about everything that happens is fodder for a book. So I think
Right.
you just have to be aware and know that almost anything can take a left turn and go wrong. So that's kind of the basis of a story anyway.
Right.
Forever.
Right. Now, today we're here to talk with you about your latest book, Hollywood Payback, which is your follow-up to your bestseller, Hollywood Hustle. If you wouldn't mind, would you give a brief summary to our listeners about Hollywood Hustle and then tell us just a little bit about Hollywood Payback, because we don't want to give too much away.
Well, Hollywood Hustle was the first book I ever wrote, and I'm not really sure where it came from, but just sat down one day and I thought, I'm going to write this story about this actor who's had a career arc much like many people that I've either known or come across. And I can say now for inspiration, I did use the life and career arcs of people like Tom Sizemore or Michael Madsen, brilliantly gifted guys who had a really steep rise and then a pretty steep crash. And Winston Green, the character that I created, had gone through those and gotten himself to a point where he was just hanging on. Things have stabilized. He's working again. He's got a pretty bad relationship with his estranged adult daughter, but life is at least stable. And that's when things go wrong for him, when he finds out that someone has kidnapped his daughter and thinking, like a lot of people do, that if you're in Hollywood, you must be made of money, and not realizing that Winston's money is long gone. And that was the premise for Hollywood Hustle. Now, Hollywood Payback, I would say, is kind of the anti Hollywood Hustle. Have you seen the movie Jay Kelly with George Clooney?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, who hasn't, right? If Winston Green was Jay Kelly or George Clooney in that movie, then Jake Ferguson, the main character of Hollywood Payback, would be the Billy Crudup character, the guy that he knew in acting class but didn't get anywhere. And in the case of Hollywood Payback, his life went off the rails. And he made some very, very bad choices, some of them fueled by substance abuse, some of them just fueled by disillusionment and heartbreak and the kind of toll that Hollywood can take on someone when it doesn't pay off the way we all want it to. And he ends up making a terrible decision that sends him to prison. That's the first story of the book, is how he went to prison. The second story of the book, so I tell this in two timelines kind of juxtaposed with each other, is what happens when he gets out. And he wants to make good with his life, apologize and make right to the people that he hurt and left behind all those years before. And then he finds out that there are some people that, and he doesn't really understand why, but have a bit of revenge with him in mind. And he has to deal with that. So that's the premise for Hollywood Payback. And I have to say that I knew those guys too, from the restaurant business when I was a struggling actor. To give that some context, I'll say by the time I was 30 years old, and by then I was a working actor for a few years, after many years of struggle, it took me 7 years to get out of the restaurant business, as it were. I knew some of those guys who, they just cracked. Not everybody can take it in Hollywood. And I like to say Hollywood is hard. It's hard to get in and it's harder to stay in. But getting
Yeah.
over that hump just to break through is one of the most difficult things you'll ever do in your life. And if it works out, wonderful. And if it doesn't, boy, does it leave a mark. And there are some people that will fall prey to that feeling of failure and make some pretty bad choices along the way. And I knew some guys who became gigolos, got into drugs, got into selling drugs, and a couple of them went to prison. And they never really got any further than maybe one or two lines in a TV episodic. So, it can be a very sad story, but how do you deal with that kind of sense of failure? I guess is what I was trying to write about when I wrote Hollywood Payback.
I have to ask, when you sit down to actually write, is it a more virtual process where you're sort of, mapping out what it would look like movie wise or episodic television wise as you're writing? Or does it come more from the character development and then the visuals and all of that come in afterwards?
I think because of my acting background, I always start with a character. And I know who that person is. I haven't maybe fleshed him out on the page yet, but I knew who Winston Green was, And I knew who Jake Ferguson was. And these guys are all composites of people that I've come across. But I think that's where I always begin. I personally, there's a phrase in the publishing world or the writing world that's particularly applied to novelists. Are you a plotter or a pantser? And does that means do you actually plot out and outline what you're going to write, or do you go by the seat of your pants? And I don't really like the term pantser, but I do write by the seat of my pants. I don't make an outline. I might have an idea as I'm driving the car and will record a thought to myself, and those become all put together a beat sheet in a way. Just things that I think would be interesting if they happen somewhere in the course of the story. But I pretty much let the story tell itself. But it always begins with that character at the center of it all. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
But
Well,
I find that that's really for me, that's the joy of writing is
Yeah.
is when you're really just trying to keep up with your fingers because the ideas are coming through you. I can't say they're coming from me, but I can say they're coming through me from somewhere bigger than me. And when you get through that kind of inspirational period of maybe 2 or 3 hours a day, one, you're exhausted, and two,
Uh,
you're so gratified by that process of chasing those words onto the page. And it's the same thing as if you get very prepared for your scene, and then you can forget the scene and just play it. And it's the same kind of immediate, exhilarating sensation.
as a follow-up, I do want to ask you, I know that in the greatest of scenes, you forget that you're acting. You're there.
Yeah.
You're doing it. The emotions are coming. Your body's reacting. If you're meant to cry, your body's physically shaking. I know in some of my writing projects, I'll come up for air, I call it, and go over some of what I've written. And there's no physical memory of
Yeah.
tapping the actual keys. And, where did this come from? And it's so damn good. That's got to be a gratifying, set of moments when you have those moments that you just look and you're like, wow, this is definitely coming through me.
Yeah, and I hear you, and I'm so glad you put it that way because I mean, it's great to have a best-selling book, and to have another book coming out, and I have a third book coming out in December in a whole different thing. But if I only got that sensation of gratification of writing. And like you put it, go back to it. I have no memory of even writing that, which is usually for me the next day when I sit down to get back to where I was. I go, wow, this is pretty good. I don't remember writing it at all, but I think it's quite good. But if that's all I got out of it, that would be enough for me.
I would imagine it's that way for songwriters as well. They sit down and because something comes to mind and they sit there and they write it and they'll put it aside for a while if it doesn't all come flowing through at one time. And then go back. We spoke to somebody that had a song that they wrote partially 25 years ago. Was it Anthony? When we
Yeah.
Yeah, 25 years ago. And he just couldn't finish it. And then one day it just was like, boom, there it is. And he got
Isn't
the
that,
whole song done.
isn't that amazing how, sometimes an idea needs to percolate. 25 years,
Exactly.
that's a pretty good stew.
Yeah. So, what did you learn from writing your first book that helped you write Hollywood Payback?
Well, probably the first lesson was that I could do it. I surprised myself by being able to get through it. And I suppose I felt the same way when I wrote my first screenplay, but it's been a while since I've done that. I will say that writing screenplays was a great primer to writing a book. I mean, writing screenplays is just kind of like a big outline for a book. Um,
Hmm.
but I, I think it was really, yeah, that I could actually kind of hold the whole idea, I don't want to call it the big idea because that sounds a little self-serving, but the whole idea of a story and all the characters in my head until I got through it and was able to follow that line until I wrote the end. Because that was a big thing. And now anybody that says to me, "Hey, I wrote a book," I just got to give them a hug, man. Because it's not easy, it's really,
Right.
it takes a really high level of commitment to get through it. And so I think anybody who does it, more power to you, man.
So on that note, you've given us a synopsis of what to expect as far as the story beats go for Hustle and now for Payback. And I'm about three-quarters of the way through Payback. It is, as our listeners know, I'm blind, so I am using a screen reader software to get through the copy that was sent. Um,
Wow.
the world itself, I think, is different than folks would maybe expect if they only saw you in one or two of your soap performances. I can definitely say, one character stands out as more of that world than others. But how do you describe the world of Hollywood Hustle and Hollywood Payback? And what do you want listeners to know going in about the atmosphere and what they're going to experience?
Well, there's a few things. With Hollywood Hustle, I think I didn't realize it at the time, but I think there was something inside of me that really wanted to pull back the curtain. And one of the most gratifying things about Hollywood Hustle for me has been the people in my industry who have reached out, who have read it. Even the company, the producers that own the company that optioned it for film said the same thing. People don't understand what it's like to be working in Hollywood.
In the grit, yeah.
Yeah, in the trenches. What does that really mean? And I think I wanted to kind of describe that for people and let people know that, listen, we got to set the alarm at our house just like anybody else because somebody can break in. We gotta keep up on our health insurance just like anybody else because we can get sick. Um, when it came to Payback, man, there's Hollywood specifically, and then there's Los Angeles. And LA is a vast, diverse, um, truly, to me, fascinating place. And that's why I set most of Hollywood Payback in downtown Los Angeles. Because to me, if there's any real visual, visceral example of the change that can happen in a huge metropolis like LA, it's probably most evident in downtown. And I can remember my early days going downtown LA. Man, if it wasn't 9 to 5, those streets were deserted.
Yeah.
And I mean, nobody went down there unless you were going to see something at the music center, at the theater or something. But now, if you were to come back to LA after a long period of time away, like Jake Ferguson does, it's an entirely different world and one that you're really kind of unprepared for, especially if you've been locked up in a cage for 20 years.
Right.
Um, I think there's something about the, the cultural, social impact of how you live in Los Angeles that I wanted to get to. And I hope I did it. But I just think that, LA is a very singular, peculiar place. And if you haven't been there, it's almost impossible to really describe it to someone who hasn't. But I tried anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, after decades in the entertainment industry, what continues to inspire you to tell new stories, either, on paper or in front of the camera or whatever way you're doing it, because you do it all.
I leave it to Pam to ask the hard questions. Um, that's a really good question, and it's a really big question. Why do we do it is what it kind of comes down to. Well, I suppose I could be flip and say, hey, do what you love and you never work a day in your life, which is true.
True. Yes.
I love what I do. And going back to saying I wake up every day and I get to do something I love. I probably am afraid that will go away. So
Mm.
I keep on it just to make sure that I still have a career going. Um, and I'm over retirement age. The thought of retirement is just foreign to me. I I don't know, man. There's just a real love of stories that goes back to my earliest memories of movies, of comic books, of TV shows, of hearing a story from someone who had a good story to tell around the campfire when we would go to the mountains and camp. I, it's just stories bind us. Stories really truly bring us together. And I'm kind of sorry for this world of streaming and all of that because it's robbing, I think, people of the collective cinema experience. But on the other hand,
Mhm.
we all have watch parties now, and we didn't have.
Right.
And when people talk about a book, that's the communal bringing together, like cinema or television, that a book can do. Have you read this book? No, I haven't. Oh, you got to read this. Um, and I certainly hope that books don't go away, but that world is going to change just like, well, it is changing. Like you're not going to be able to get the little paperbacks anymore pretty soon. But I
Oh,
find,
well, that's sad to hear.
yeah, yeah, the little dime store
The mass markets. Yeah.
mass market paperbacks are going away. They just can't make money off of them. They'll still make trade paperbacks, but everything is going to kind of go towards the digital world. And, hey, we used to watch silent film. So, it's just I guess, another stage in the evolution of creative humankind.
Well,
But,
before
I
Anthony
don't know
asks
if I
his,
can adequately answer your question, Pam.
yeah, you did. We get your meaning.
Okay.
Um, Before Anthony asks his next question, I also wanted to say that, you know, what you're saying, paperbacks are going away, which is sad because, they're easier to bring with you on a train or, to
Mhm.
work or whatever, something like that, instead of bringing the big hardback cover. Um, but I'm thinking when you said that, remember vinyls for LPs?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
45s.
they have made a comeback, and I am thrilled to death about that. I mean, because
Yeah.
that was what you looked forward to when you loved somebody's music. It was going out and buying that physical album and looking at the cover art and any of their notes inside, or sometimes the words or whatever. And that was gone for such a long time because of CDs and all that stuff. But now it's making such a comeback, and I couldn't be happier about that. So maybe eventually we'll get paperbacks back.
Yeah, maybe, maybe. I think, I'm really heartened by that too, because I think there's also something about the sound of an LP,
Hmm.
vinyl LP,
Yeah.
that is very analog and kind of human to listen to, which I think is the same thing with books. There's just something about being able to hold a book in your hand and
Exactly.
yeah, and have your own mind create the images around the descriptions inside the book. Um, and I think that probably is, at least I hope, fingers crossed, the thing that will keep AI from taking us all over.
Right.
Is just the human touch that we tend to get away from it, and then we always seem to come back to it in one form or another. So, I'm glad you brought that up, Pam. That's heartening to remember.
I will say, as someone who lost sight midlife at the age of 40, when folks ask, like, what do I miss the most? I have three answers that, are tied. They're the top answer. They are. It is what it is. I miss being able to see my great niece's face when she was first born. I
Oh,
miss driving, and I miss holding a book in my hand.
um,
Um, the art of feeling, the book as you're turning the paper, smelling the paper, and immersing yourself, as wonderful as audiobooks are, and they truly are. There is that act of being a part of turning the page, of building that story together that cannot be replicated.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Earlier, you spoke about Hollywood and LA, and I think Pam and I both recognize that they're characters amongst themselves. Especially in Payback, in the beginning of Payback, you give us a glimpse at this version of Hollywood that's raw and unfiltered. So how much, was Hollywood and larger LA downtown and such, how much of that was character for you as well?
Oh, how much was LA character for me?
Yeah.
Indispensable. Yeah. I mean, I think to me, it's a huge part of, I mean, it's a huge part of what I do when I write a Hollywood book. I think it's just indispensable I mean, I can't imagine somebody asked me, because I'm spending a lot of time in Atlanta doing Beyond the Gates. Should I write a Hollywood story set in Atlanta because there's a Hollywood community here? And I've been here, better part of over a year now. And I'd have to say, no, it's just not the same. Atlanta's a really
Mm.
nice town, but it doesn't have the very individualistic kind of feeling that Los Angeles as a whole has. And I just think that that's part of it. The rolling hills and the beach and the Hollywood sign and downtown LA and these clusters of towns that make up greater Los Angeles and then Los Angeles County, and the fact that you can ski in the morning and go surfing in the afternoon, which I've actually done. You know,
Yeah.
it's just there is nothing else like it. And I think it's absolutely intrinsic, almost like on a cellular level, to telling a story about Hollywood. It has to also be about Los Angeles as a whole.
Yeah, I think that many different places, different states, cities, whatever, because in Chicago, they do a lot of filming here as well. They can try to replicate Hollywood, but it'll never be Hollywood.
No, and you want to shoot in Chicago, make a movie about Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yep.
that's an interesting place. But it's even on a metaphoric level, which is sort of obvious, but you can't ignore it, is that sunny palm tree feeling that somehow still hides this very dark underbelly to Los
Hmm.
Angeles, which is made up of what people are willing to do to get ahead. That's the dark underbelly of Los Angeles and Hollywood specifically. It's not like Chicago doesn't have that, but Chicago has seasons. You
Yeah.
know?
It feeds the
Yeah, like
desire and it feeds the
four of
hope at
them
the
in
same
one
time.
day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but that
Oh,
whole, LA living, it feeds the hope at the same time. It's also feeding the underbelly. And so, when you're waking up to almost perfect weather 95% of the year, there's that layer of, okay, it'll get better. It can get better. This is the world of dreams. I just have
Mhm.
to stick it out.
Yeah, it's almost like the that constant when they said in the movie Swingers. I mean, every day is a nice day here. I mean, every day. You know,
mhm.
it does feed that sense of hope and positivity that but anything's possible here. It doesn't even rain that much. I can whatever, if I can do it here, where else can I do it? It's just God, it's like the city is one big fat metaphor, isn't it?
Yeah.
For potential. It just even illuminates even greater potential that's possible there.
Right. Now, you mentioned earlier about Hollywood Hustle being optioned for a feature film. What
Mhm.
was your reaction when you found out that it was going to jump from page to film, and how did it all come about?
Well, it really, to answer your first question, I was utterly stunned. But I guess timing is everything. I didn't write this with the intention of having a movie made out of it. Honestly, I didn't care. And if you look at my resume or my IMDb, you'll see that I've been involved in filmmaking and screenwriting and directing and all of that for a long time. But I found that there's just so many cooks in the kitchen. I wanted to do something where I didn't have to be bothered with a development meeting. And there's a big difference in publishing than there is in, say, development at Hollywood. In publishing, if somebody doesn't disagree, they'll just say, "Hey, I've got an idea." And then they tell you a very good reason why you might change something. And when you hear that argument, you go, "You know what? Let the experts do what they do. I'll change that." And it turns out that they were right. When you get that conversation in Hollywood, oftentimes it's change it or else. Change it or we
Yeah.
won't make your movie. Change it or we won't, pay you. It just becomes rather kind of bullying. And I understand why. There's a lot of money involved in making a movie or television show. And so that's a big risk. But there's a lot of money being risked when you're putting out books too. So it's just a difference in the cultures for some reason, and I can't really explain why. So when it came along, and it was really because of my talent manager, Gordon Gilbertson. He's also a producer, and so he's always looking for what we call IP or intellectual property. And he came to me and he said, "Listen, I know this company that has made a lot of lower budget genre films, and they want to bump up. They want to make bigger films with big stars. And I think they might like your book, Hollywood Hustle, to adapt." And I said, "Listen, as long as I don't have to do anything, go with God. Go ahead." And so he went to them. He actually pitched the idea to them, and they read the book and they said, "Yeah, we want to make this." Because they are, like I say, those workaday people who understood this is what it's like, and it's set within a crime story, and they just felt it would make a good movie. I suppose it doesn't hurt that I tend to write sort of cinematically. Having been around Hollywood for so long, I don't think I can help myself. So I tend to write sort of visually. And I think they probably responded to that too, that, hey, if we're going to adapt anything, this is something that can be adapted. Um, so the process for me has been really simple. They asked my opinion on who they thought would be right to adapt the screenplay, and I gave them my opinion, and they made their choice, and the movie's being adapted right now. Um, and I suppose we might see it in theaters maybe in 2 years. So it's a long process too. But I'm just very happy that somebody enjoyed the book and the story enough to think that it had life beyond being a book, which again, I just didn't expect. I really wasn't looking for it. So it's all been a happy surprise. I guess that's the simplest way to put it. I've shocked you
For
into
you.
silence. That's it.
No, because I was going to ask, how much creative response and, and or control did you want to have over, the visuals and the taking this from the page to the screen? And it seems like you're pretty comfortable letting the experts do what they do. And if it turns out wonderful and wins an Oscar, great. And if it doesn't, you still put something out into the world that you're proud of. So
Yeah,
can
and
we at least expect a cameo in the
oh,
movie?
I don't know. I mean, we haven't gotten there yet. It might be fun if we get to it, but I think you just have to be very cognizant of the difference between a book and a movie. And there's a lot of interiority that goes on in a book. You're describing what somebody's thinking and how they're feeling and all that. And
Yeah.
you can't do that in a movie. You have to show it. you know? So how do you make that difference? And I mean, there's enough horror stories, you know, like I heard James Elroy just absolutely trash the movie treatment of his book, Confidential, which shocked me because I think
Yeah.
that's one of the great crime movies ever made.
Yeah.
And it fairly shocked Michael Connelly when he was on the stage at the LA Times Festival of Books moderating the conversation with James Elroy. I think he was like, whoa, I didn't expect that answer. Um, and you know, Don Winslow, the great Don Winslow, was very upset with the way um, Oliver Stone handled one of his books. I can't remember the name of it now. Um, so I think if I were going to have any control or input, is really what it comes down to, because I have no control. Um, I would say, you know, listen, if you want to treat it like a farce, that's certainly a choice. But if it were up to me, I'd try to keep it more grounded and reflect what I tried to do with the book and make it more of a straight ahead crime story where the violence is very violent and the stakes are very high and the emotions are very deep. But if you want to treat it like a satire of Hollywood, knock yourself out. I just don't know if I can help you there.
You
Sure.
know, I can visualize as a, okay, let me start again. I bought the book, but I also listened to it on Audible when I was walking. And just to listen to you tell the story, you're so good at that because
Oh,
I could
thank you.
visualize everything happening in the
Yeah.
book. I mean, I can do it with reading the book, physically, but listening to you tell the story made a whole world of difference. And I really highly recommend people do both. Um, what was it like for you reading it back?
You know, a little surreal, to be honest. I had at least some background in it. You know, I'd already narrated 40 plus books. You know, most of which were done during the pandemic. Kind of got me through the pandemic. But to sit there and narrate your own book, yeah,
Mhm.
it was a it was a strange sort of experience, but it was one I really enjoyed. It was part of the deal when the publishers at Crooked Lane came to me. They said, you know, we want to release your book, but with the caveat that you narrate the audio version as well, which is also true for Hollywood Payback, which interestingly, I'm about halfway through the quality control copy of the audiobook for that, which is also narrated by me. Um, so I'm listening to Hollywood Payback. I was listening to it right before we got on the call here, and I have to go right back to it because I got to turn it in in a couple of days. Um, so you know, I think maybe there might be an advantage to having a narrator who knows how to narrate his own book, because most authors don't. You know, most authors have professional actors narrate their book. And for that
Yes.
reason, you know, because it can sound a little dull if you're garden variety author. And we make a joke, you know, when we go to these these book conferences, um, everybody gets a little lubricated because you got a whole big room full of introverted writers who suddenly have to go and talk to each other. You know, so they have a couple of cocktails and it becomes a real party. But you know, don't ask them to narrate their own book; they don't want to.
I have to ask, with the wealth of in front of the camera experience you have written screenplays. The first two novels that have come out have been more on the darker side. Taking a look at the darker side. Um, do you feel that there's a romance buried in there somewhere, or a more heartwarming, happier ending kind of story that might want to call its way out at some point?
Well, I will say that you know, Payback actually does have a bit of a romance happening in it. That relates to the earlier story and is taking place in the contemporary story. I'm not against romance. I'm just I don't know. I suppose at some point I will write what would be considered a book that has a quote unquote love story in it. Um, but I don't know. I just maybe that's how I see Hollywood. I don't see it as a very romantic place in the at the end of the day.
Well, we have Hollywood Hustle and we have Hollywood Payback. I've got a great title for a third in case you are already playing around with, another in this vein. I would definitely suggest Hollywood Comeuppance. But any titles floating around in your head? And I know that there is a book tour scheduled. So what's upcoming? When can people actually have the book in their hands or their AirPods? And where can they potentially interact with you in terms of the book or anything else you can share with us as far as upcoming projects?
Well, the book itself comes out on April 14th in all formats, hardback, paperback, ebook, and audio. So as of April 14th, the entire world will be able to get it. I am starting my book tour on April 9th, which means that there will be three special pre-publication events: April 9th in Ashland, Oregon, April 10th in Pasadena, California, and April 13th in Huntsville, Alabama. So if you come to any one of those three, the books will actually be there and you can get your copy before the official release on April 14th. Um, if you want all the details, just go to my website, jonlindstrom.com, and go to the events page, and there's a PDF right there. You can't miss it. You can download that, and it has links to all the details for all of the events. After Huntsville, I'll be coming back to Atlanta, then on to Dallas, and then to Ringgold, Georgia, and then St. Louis, Missouri, and then New York, New York for the big Thriller Fest conference, which is one of my favorite
Awesome.
things to do. And then lastly, Severna Park, Maryland. And many of these will be I'll be sharing these events with other great authors like Robert Bailey. Michael Easton is joining me in LA.
Nice.
Yeah, Ethan Cross in St. Louis and Alex Finlay in Maryland. Yeah, Michael's a very good friend and agreed to come and co-host this event with me at Vroman's in Pasadena. So, and he is, I don't know if you know this, he happens to be a gifted writer in his own right.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
his
he and
his
I like
manga
it.
stuff, and yeah, he's definitely a
Really,
talent.
really talented. Gosh, I don't have any movies coming out. All of those have been shot and released, and I'm going to be doing a lot on Beyond the Gate. So now that I'm under contract over there, they've kind of amped up my workload. So I've got to be flying in and out of Atlanta between book stops and trips to the studio to spout lines of Joey Armstrong. So I am a busy guy. And I do
Definitely.
start another book.
But there's one thing I want to mention.
Hmm.
Anthony, did you notice that John skipped over Miami and Chicago for that book tour?
I did. I
No,
did. I might be able
well,
to get back up to New York for a weekend.
we just haven't set those dates. You'll be on the schedule. Just be patient, okay?
Oh, yay. Thank you.
I'm glad you mentioned that you have been brought on contract.
Yeah.
I I really believe that this is one of those characters that the fans are as responsible for the success. To call the presence of Joey a success is interesting in its own right, but I truly believe this is one of the fan, pushed forward characters, and I have to congratulate and Michelle and all of the runners for leaning in and giving us so much good Joey, but also for you for taking what's on the page and making it so good for us.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Michelle there because, I've known about Beyond the Gates since it was called just The Gates. well before the pandemic. It was in Bible form and
Yep.
had been greenlit at the network before the pandemic came down. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and poor Michelle had to sit there with bated breath for the next 3 years while they still kept calling her. I mean, the head of the network and the people at Procter and Gamble and everybody calling her and saying, "Don't worry, we're still going to do this show." And finally, it got off the ground, and it's been a real bright spot for the network. But to see my dear friend's dream come true like this has been one of the most gratifying things in my life. And to be able to contribute to it in this way, because I got to hand it to her, man. She's the one that created that character. And Joey Armstrong, I mean, is right up there with Ryan Chamberlain for me.
Yeah.
I was going to say that. There's a
Yeah.
tiny bit of Kevin Collins, but it's mainly a combination of Ryan and Chamberlain with more edge to the Ryan part.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a perfect combination.
And I'm just having a blast playing him. I just really love Joey Chamberlain, as does the audience, apparently. Surprise, surprise. What do you know? They have the guy you love to hate.
And how, interesting a dichotomy. You still have a presence on our longest running that's still, on air. And you have a presence on, what is revolutionizing the genre and giving us, I mean, the way of storytelling too. It feels like they just listened to soap fans and said, we're gonna give you the kind of storytelling you want to see. And
Yeah.
but here you are representing both ends of that spectrum.
Yeah,
It's
it's see what I mean? Again, I'm so blessed. I'm just so absolutely blessed. In fact, I was grocery shopping earlier, and a woman in front of me on the line turns around and she's like, "Oh my gosh, you're a General Hospital." And I said, "What's the matter? You're not watching Beyond the Gates?" But it got me to thinking, I as much fun as I'm having at Beyond the Gates in this brand new studio with this great new group, and it's got all this new show energy around it, which is just, you can't replace that, that feeling of we're all doing this together. I miss my friends and family at General Hospital. I miss working with Jeannie Francis. I miss seeing that crew that I've known for decades. And so I hope I can get back over there at some point between now and the end of the year, just to shoot out a few more Kevin Collins episodes.
Yeah, that would be
They
great.
surprised us a couple of years ago and gave us a throwback to Sigmund. Do you ever miss the duck?
Who couldn't miss the duck? We had several playing Sigmund, but you'd never. But yeah, it was always fun to have Sigmund around and hold him like a football and just kind of wander around the set. I used to walk into the, yeah, I used to walk off the set and just wander around with this duck tucked under my arm, and he would look at me and quack and look around. He was great.
Oh my gosh, that is too cute.
Yeah.
Well, we want to congratulate you on Hollywood Hustle being a bestseller, USA Today bestseller for that matter, and your new Hollywood Payback book and all of your other endeavors, your tour and Beyond the Gates, everything. I mean, there's just so much. So congratulations on everything, including life. And
Thank you
we thank you
very,
so
very
much for joining us today.
Oh, I
Absolutely.
guys, it's always fun to talk to you guys. I hope we do it again next year.
Absolutely.
we
As
will.
soon as you have a release date for the book, let us know and we will book the time. Again, thank you so much for being with us. And everybody, you can hear this Take Two Radio. You can also find out all things Sunday Edition and the family of podcasts at www.anthonycorona.com. And we will be back with an interesting comedian on our next show. So look for the details of that. Anything I'm missing, Pam?
Nope, I think that's it for now. Just say I'm going to tell everybody, go get John's book. I'm telling you, both of them, you're going
Absolutely.
to love them.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. original stage, turning every listen to a brand new page. Oh, take to radio, the remix in your soul. Indie beats and killer comedy, taking control. Got that rhythm, got that wit, a perfect blend from the start of the show till the very end. Spinning tracks you never thought you'd find, expanding horizons, blowing up your mind. Then a punchline drop sharp and so precise, makes you lean in closer, hear it twice. No filter, no pretense, just honest fun. Underneath the starlight or the morning sun, they pick you up when you're feeling low, with a killer riff and a joke to know. Oh, take to radio, the remix in your soul. Indie beats and killer comedy, taking control. Got that rhythm, got that wit, a perfect blend from the start of the show till the very end. Forget the worry, let the good times roll. They connect the artists, make your spirit whole. With every segment, a story unfolds. More than just a broadcast, more precious than gold. Oh, take to radio.